Hello everybody and welcome back to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Max Sage, your host, and here we are to discuss Forest's defeat to Newcastle, 3-1. Forest's only second defeat of the season at home on a Sunday in front of the TV cameras. Maybe a disappointing one as well. Forest conceding 3 goals at home, but that comes after Murillo getting his first Premier League goal in the first half, which was nice to see. A great header for him and great to see him on the score sheet. But Forest lose the game 3-1. We shall discuss all of that, the performance, and talk about Anthony Elanga, many other key players as well. Not singling him out, but just a heads up. We're probably going to talk about him and many others, as some Forest fans will argue the bubble is burst. But I certainly think that maybe it just brings us all back down to reality slightly after dreaming about Europe. But who knows? We're still up there at the top of the table rather than looking down for once. Joined by Mark Turner, who watched the game in America. Mark, good to see you, mate, back on the pod. Just me and you today for our main episode to ramble on. You've got a fancy new microphone. You're looking dapper. We're not matching for once, but that Forest result, I suppose, letting you down.
Hello, mate. Yep, excited to be with you again, despite us having to talk about a Forest defeat, a rare Forest defeat. But you know what, Max? I think this is all part of Nuno's plan. We're trying to lull Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool and the like into a false sense of security. So I'm okay with it.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Let's talk about the game from minute 1, really. And before we talk football, just wanted to say, thought the minute silence was brilliantly observed by both Forest and Newcastle fans, which was the least you expect, really, and great to see. Of course, thought the last post as well played was amazing. So absolute credit, and obviously a nice Forza Garibaldi display to kickstart the afternoon off as Forest kicked off at 2 o'clock. Mark, what did you make of the game? I mean, I was just saying to you before we started recording, yeah, it's disappointing, but it was always going to happen. Forest were always going to lose, a game and get kind of brought back down to reality, maybe. And I thought Newcastle deserved it. I thought they played really well. Even in the first half when Forest were a goal up, I kind of went into that half-time break thinking, I don't think Forest are going to win this game here. Newcastle were dangerous. And I think midfield was where we maybe lost the game. I don't know about your kind of overall thoughts to start us off.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle are no mugs, obviously. They beat Arsenal last week, and if anyone who watched that game will appreciate they beat Arsenal well. I mean, Newcastle were the better team on the day, and they deserved all 3 points. And the same is true again today. I agree with you, Max. From first whistle, Forest did not look at the races. They were making a lot of really uncharacteristic errors, particularly when they weren't even under pressure. I think the 2 things that concerned me the most was, again, not connecting what were fairly straightforward passes when they weren't under an enormous amount of pressure. So just turning the ball over very easily. And also we didn't see the intensity that we've seen from Forest in maybe the last 2 or 3 games in particular in terms of our pressing game, where we've really gotten down the throat of, against West Ham. I remember we were pressing them all over the field, not giving them a second to really catch their breath. And we didn't see that again today. And, in the post-match, Nuno alluded to the fact that, well, Colin Frey kind of, I don't know if this is a conversation that took place before they went live. And so Colin Frey was kind of baiting him to kind of restate what they discussed, or if this is a conversation that came about in the week. But essentially the suggestion was, some of the players out there looking fatigued, need a bit of a rest because, we've been playing more or less the same players week in, week out for a number of weeks now. And though I sympathize with that, that's why you have a squad. And one of the things we've been talking about, Max, here over the last few weeks is just how good our squad looks, right? How we have cover all over the field. That being the case, then use those players. You can't not use those players and then complain a few weeks later that the players you're using look tired. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I agree. I heard that line actually and thought, maybe a bit of media play from Forest, quite clever, but you can understand potentially why as well. And it's funny, actually, you do say that because I think walking to the ground, everyone checks at 1:45 now, the extra 15 minutes we get with the team news now. And it gets released and it's unchanged and everyone's thinking, great, right? It's an unchanged 11 and, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And all of that, as we alluded to on the preview show just a few days ago now with me and Sam. And, you think, oh, well, consistency and all of that. And then maybe we think about playing other. And then when Nuno talks about the fitness of the players, as you allude to, Mark, it's just one of those, isn't it? Were you shocked to see an unchanged 11? I mean, I wasn't. And if I was managing Forest today, I wouldn't have changed anything. My only argument would you have brought James Ward-Prowse in because we got turned over in midfield? But that's in hindsight, right? And hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Well, I saw the last episode with Sam, so we're going with if it ain't broke, don't fix it now, rather than it ain't fixed, don't broke. Is that
why did I say that last time? Of course I did.
It tickled me. It tickled me.
Must have been a long game, mate.
Anyway, no, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I wasn't disappointed to see an unchanged lineup as well. I don't know that James Ward-Prowse would necessarily been front of mind for any change. I think perhaps I'd have tried to look for a way to incorporate Elliot Anderson. But I don't want to sound wise after the fact. Morgan Gibbs-White had an awful game. I mean, England international. He didn't even look like a Scotland international today. But apologies to our Scottish listeners and viewers. But you can be wise after the fact. Morgan would obviously be one of the first names on the team sheet ordinarily. I don't know how you'd bring Elliot Anderson into that starting lineup, given how well Yates and Dominguez have played over the last few weeks. Again, that being said, though, we know there's fatigue in the team. Well, we don't know. We've been told. Evidently, there is. And so maybe it would have been a smart move to try and find a way to bring Elliot Anderson into one of those two spots. But certainly, Max, I agree with you. I think midfield, more than anywhere else on the field, is where we lost it. We struggled to hold the ball up today, but we also struggled to get beyond Chris Wood, not Woods, as the commentator on Peacock insisted on saying. Peacock's one of the channels over here, Max, that covers Premier League. It was so infuriating. But we struggled to get beyond Chris Wood. And also in defence, I think we did a good job of holding back the tide. I don't think it was a bad defensive effort despite conceding 3 goals. Midfield, though, is where we really dropped the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And just staying on that midfield, I was going to touch on Murillo's goal first of all, but we've got to kind of talk about that almost. I just felt like Forest massively lost the game in midfield. And, whenever you saw either a 50-50 or kind of turnover of play, I just almost had in the ground this sense of Forest were going to lose it. And I thought Ryan Yates gave away way too many fouls today. Of course, Yatesy is... Yatesy brought in as a player and he has a job and that's to win as many fouls as he can on the football pitch, which he still would have done today. And it goes unnoticed, the hard work. But I just thought he did almost the polar opposite and gave too many away. I thought he was a little bit scrappy at times. I didn't think Dominguez had, an amazing game today, which is maybe a bit harsh to say given his obviously recent performance. He's been excellent. As you alluded to, Morgan didn't have the best game. Elliot Anderson then comes on and looks quite nervy. I thought, you could tell he was a player playing against his former club. He just didn't seem really with it. I thought there was just some kind of silly hospital passes at times. And I just thought that was where Forest lost it. And even in the first half, Mark, would you agree that the midfield was... he's normally an area where recently we've talked about how almost good the transition of players. Today it was just the complete polar opposite.
Yeah, and obviously depending where we are in our play depends on whether or not you consider Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga to be forwards or whether to be midfielders. But if I include them in the midfield conversation for the purposes of this discussion, there's blame to go around. I actually think you're being a little bit harsh on Dominguez. I think, no, he didn't have his best game for us for sure. But I think of a bad bunch, he was the best one out there. Morgan Gibbs-White was giving the ball away far too frequently. Anthony Elanga's decision-making was woeful. Callum Hudson-Odoi was completely absent. And I agree with you on Ryan Yates. Obviously, I'm a big Yates fan. But... he contributed nothing today. That was probably his worst game of the season, honestly. And that can happen, right? And you just hope that it doesn't happen for every player in the same match as it appeared to today. I don't know what was going on with Elliot Anderson. I really thought he would have been up for it. But I wonder at that point, Max, when he and the other subs came on, if, Forest were really under the cosh, everything was really fractured out there. There was just no fluidity to the way we were playing. And I wonder if the subs were kind of on a hiding to nothing. I mean, you want them to go on and change things, but I wonder if the well was just too poisoned at that point. Newcastle definitely in the ascendancy. And then when Harvey Barnes came on, I got to be honest, I was really worried. I think Barnes is an excellent player. I
was shocked to see him on the bench, actually.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. I think he would start in many of the Premier League teams, and he always seems to score when he plays. It's sort of like the lad at Fulham who's now finding his way back into the starting 11, Wilson.
Yes.
Yeah. Another one who, like, I guess maybe they're patchy players. They ebb and flow, and maybe that's why they're in and out of the team. But yeah, Barnes always seems to score, and he was definitely an influence when he came on today in a way that our subs weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Eddie Howe's 3rd year anniversary today, as well as Newcastle manager. So he gets a nice anniversary present.
Good manager.
That. Yeah, I like Eddie Howe. I was shocked that he wasn't involved even in the England job discussion, but that's another topic of conversation we shall not get into. Let's talk about Murillo before we talk about more negatives and maybe single out some players that could have done better. Murillo gets his first senior goal, by the way. I don't think he's ever scored before, genuinely. And we thought it might come in a long range effort, but it comes with a nice header in the box, and it was a bullet header. He was left unmarked. He rose up, and it was a great header, and nice to see him on the score sheet. I thought first half in particular he had a great game, and I just suppose him getting a goal breeds confidence, and it's just nice for him. Nice to have him on the score sheet, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. Anthony Elanga's delivery was good. I'm not going to get too hyperbolic about that because it was so close. You really just had to put that ball into a dangerous place. That goal, to your point, Max, was entirely created by the movement of Murillo. He did a great job coming from an unmarked position. And kids watching, like, that's how you execute a header. Down into the ground, make it almost impossible for the goalkeeper to react. Fantastic finish. And then, again, his first senior goal, which I can't remember which player it was, but late in the celebrations, one of his teammates, I want to say maybe it was Alaina, but I don't know, kind of had up a one. Like, is that your first? And you can see Murillo nodding away vigorously. And he was just so excited. And his celebration seemed to go on longer than the goal, the time it took to like execute the free kick and then score the goal. Like, the celebrations were probably twice as long, and I was glad to see it. Really, really happy for him, right as he gets ready to go off and hopefully make his first senior appearance for Brazil as well.
Yes, absolutely. Great to see him involved with Brazil. Who'd have thought that Forest would have pretty much two internationals?
Crazy.
Morgan Gibbs-White for England and Murillo for Brazil. Mental. I'd never have thought that when I started supporting Forest. And no disrespect, but seeing players like Jonathan Greening on the City Ground turf. I've just been looking actually at the BBC Sports ratings, Mark, and they've rated Ryan Yates 1.84, which I think is maybe a little bit too harsh, but maybe that's because I'm a Yatesy lover.
Out of what?
This is out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
No Forest player got above 6 on the ratings today, which I think is pretty normal given a result. I'm not going to ask you to rate the players, but do you think that's harsh maybe with Yates? And let's stick with him. As I mentioned, I just thought he gave quite a lot of fouls away, and I just thought he had a shocker. And I'm not saying he didn't do this, but when you're maybe a goal down or even 2 goals down, as Forest were today, I just saw, particularly as the second went in, there was a bit of a lack of communication from the players, and you'd think maybe Morgan, who was Morgan still on the pitch? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was when Forest.
The second goal,
the second goal. The second goal. Morgan was still on the pitch, and obviously the same for Yatesy. Mm-hmm. And you'd maybe think for those 2 players, as influential players, as captains of Forest, would maybe communicate a little bit with the players. But I thought that they were a little bit quiet, just watching them and noticing them. And look, we don't know what goes on, and I can't tell if they whispered anything or said anything at all. But I just thought that they maybe picked the crowd up or picked the players up, and I don't think they did. And yet, like I say, I thought Ryan Yates gave many fouls away today, and as you said earlier, Mark, I just thought he had a pretty poor game. Would you agree? Yeah,
as I said earlier, I mean, again, big Yates fan, rate him, but he had a bad day in the office today, and everyone's allowed that. And I think you're right. There definitely was a breakdown in communication on that second goal, but that can happen again. That can happen to the best of teams. Anyone who watched the Arsenal-Chelsea match immediately after would have seen Neto hitting in a banger for Chelsea. But you have to look at the Arsenal defence and say, what were you doing? They just seemed to step off of him and be, you know, you have a pop. And he did. And, you know, that was what earned them a point. So it can happen to any defence. It can happen to any individual player. It's just disappointing that so many Forest players were off the boil today. But now we go into the international break. Those players who needed a little bit of time, you know, a little bit of a rest, a bit of downtime, are going to have the opportunity. Even players like Murillo and Morgan Gibbs-White, who do go off to their respective international teams, are probably not going to feature a whole lot. So hopefully they'll have that opportunity to get their legs back under them, ready for their return in Garibaldi.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned fitness there, and obviously an issue that Nuno talked about. I thought in particular, Alex Moreno, if we're staying on kind of singling out players, I thought he looked very, very tired, and that is understandable given the amount of minutes he's had recently, as of all the players. But he looked very tired, and I felt like today Moreno was going back rather than forward when he got the ball, and I just thought, again, some sloppy passes, tackles potentially just not there, and it, you know, just a bit of an off day, not just for him but for so many of the players as well.
Yeah, with Moreno, you also have to factor in as well that he was a bit part player for Villa. You know, the last 6 months, he came off the back of an injury. He was then struggling to get back into the first team. And so he hasn't had a lot of minutes in his legs, I don't think, over the last number of months. I'm not sure how many it is exactly. And now here he is starting for Forest, playing just about every minute of every game. You know, occasionally we've seen him subbed out toward the end when Forest have rotated in fullbacks, but he's seen a lot of field time. So it's not surprising to me. He's looking a little bit gassed. And again, he's one of those who will benefit from the international break.
Yeah, absolutely. As many players will. You know, the international break probably comes at the right time now. A nice weekend off before the easy trip to the Emirates the following Saturday. Did you feel confident going in at the break at half time? I talked earlier, Mark, but I just didn't feel confident. Maybe I'm being really negative here, and forgive me, but even though Forest were a goal up, I actually looked at my brother and I said, I think we're going to lose this game. I just had this nasty feeling, and sometimes you do. And I just thought the game wasn't panning out how Forest would have wanted the game to have gone. And I thought first half it was not great. Second half it was obviously a lot worse, given the 2 goals conceded. 2 goals conceded. It wasn't 3, thank God. And I just thought that, yeah, going into the break at half time wasn't great at all. I don't know if you had the same confidence issues or not.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you should say that, because even though Newcastle were the better team in the first half, I felt like the game was very much in the balance. And knowing that Forest, generally speaking, are a second half team, I was thinking it's going to be so interesting to see which team grabs this game by the scruff of the neck in the second 45. I was sort of expecting to see one manager or the other, you know, make tactical changes or deliver a team talk that would inspire their team to really grab the nettle. Evidently, one of the managers was able to, which does pose an interesting question, Max. Do you think Nuno should go back up into the stands? Do you think if someone said to Nuno, we guarantee you a Champions League place at the end of the season if you spend the rest of the season up in the stands, do you think he'd take that?
Maybe. You never know. Although even
most Forest fans would.
Yeah. I think anybody would. I tell you what, though, the manager of the month curse really is true, isn't it? And the player of the month curse for Chris Wood, who didn't score.
Right.
Which, you know, I'm not criticising Chris Wood here by any chance. I still think he looked sharp and he held the ball up, but he had a quiet game, as a lot of the players did. And he didn't score, and he didn't get a Chris Wood goal, and he didn't get closer to Erling Haaland. And then, yeah, Nuno returns to the sidelines with the Manager of the Month award under his belt, and Forest end up losing the game. Do you know, Forest?
It's lucky there's not a podcast host of the month award, isn't there? Really?
Yeah, it really is, because I definitely wouldn't get it. Do you know what? I'm shocked to read this. Actually, this stat is that if Forest would have won today, it would have been the first time we'd have won 4 in a row, 4 straight wins. Yeah, that's 4 straight wins in the Premier League for the first time in 29 years.
Wow.
So we've not won 4 games in a row.
I do like all these stats that they're throwing out, which make me laugh. It's like, the first time Forest had done something in Premier League in 26 years, in 28 years. And I'm like, 23 of those we weren't in the Premier League.
I know, yeah, it's a bit harsh, isn't it? It's not like we've been, it's not like we've been in the Premier League for all those.
It just makes it sound more sensational than it really is. Like, oh, wow, Forest have been labouring away for the last 28 years to do this thing. No, 23 of them, we weren't even in competition for it. So anyway.
Yes. Right. Let's. I actually wanted to talk about the response after half time. I always think in any football game, the players have to come out kind of firing and ready. And second half, Forest started sloppy, probably the same way that they started the first half, and then were ultimately punished with the equaliser pretty much straight away. From then onwards, you could tell that I just thought Newcastle getting a second, then ultimately a third was inevitable. They have quality on the pitch. They have a good team. They use that team. And I thought they were very physical today as well, Mark. Actually, one point to talk about. Forest came out sloppy in the second half, but we should have battled more really against them. I thought Forest lacked physicality, not just in the midfield, not just even in attack with Chris Wood holding the ball up potentially, but also defensively. Forest seemed to really struggle with balls into the box and just generally defending. It just seemed that Newcastle are a very, very physical side.
They are, and they're a savvy side as well. I mean, there's playing the game technically and tactically well, which Newcastle did fairly well today. I wouldn't say it was like a banner performance, but of two. Well, I won't say they're a bad team either, but of two teams that maybe weren't playing at their peak today, certainly Forest weren't. Newcastle were undoubtedly the better team, both technically and tactically today, at least how they showed in the 90-plus minutes today. They're also savvy there, like you said, very physical, time wasting in the referee's ear, which was really irritating me, but it influences things, and they're smart. I mean, these are seasoned, dyed-in-the-wool Premier League players who know what they're doing, and they play every aspect of the game again, well, not to perfection necessarily today, but I don't want to keep harping on this, but definitely the better of the two teams. I was disappointed with how we started the second half, Max, although I was buoyed by how we responded after the third goal. You can argue the game was gone by then, but there was still, whatever it was, 10, 15 minutes still to go. And I think Forest got on the front foot. You could say, well, yeah, Newcastle were purposely on their heels at that point. They had a 2-goal lead to defend, and so it was a lot easier for them to sit deep and absorb that pressure. But Forest weren't out of it, and I think, had they gotten a second goal, it could have gotten interesting. I was a little disappointed to hear afterwards that Forest fans were starting to leave the City ground early. And it's not a dig at you. I know you had to leave a little bit early because you have to travel all the way back to Manchester, but I don't know what people's takes are on that. I feel like, intellectually, I get it. Like, you buy your season ticket, you're entitled to say what you say within reason at a football match and leave when you leave. But you're supposed to be a hardcore supporter of the team. I mean, you spend all that money on a season ticket. Why aren't you supporting your team from first minute to last if you don't have like travel considerations or need to get the nipper home to go to bed early or whatever? What's your take on that?
It's funny because I was literally just about to either mention it or I was going to touch on it at the end because it's blown up this as someone put a tweet on earlier, as everyone does, and it's blown up on Twitter and on the Forest timeline. So we'll talk about it now. Yeah, I mean, look, I left early because, as you said, I had to get back to Manchester, and people have work and jobs and life, I think, does get in the way. So, yes, it's disappointing to see maybe fans leave at the end. I'm not in a position to. I think football fans in general, take away the Forest connection here. Let's stop talking about Forest for once. Let's talk about if football fans should leave earlier. I think they're entitled to leave when they want. They pay the money. I've got mates that have left when their team's been 4-0 down at half time before, and they've missed a 4-4. And that's their fault, and they've left, right? But they're entitled to leave. They would have been entitled to stay. The same way if your team's 2-0 up and there's 2 minutes left and you want to get out and beat the traffic, you're entitled to do that. So I think that it splits opinion, and I think that there are a lot of people, and it's the same when people say, "Oh, if you don't go to one game, you're not a true fan." Well, that's absolutely not true because life does get in the way, right? People have things to do, and football isn't life as much as we all talk about it, and it dominates how we, our mood and how we're feeling on Saturday, Sunday evening. Today, I'm going to go to bed tonight annoyed that Forest haven't won, but it's just football. Life does move on. And at the end of the day, controversial statement, please forgive me, it is just 11 men kicking a ball, right? And, of course, there's much more to that at times. I just thought that, I think that the Forest fans are entitled to leave when they want. I've got no complaints about the ground being half empty. It was a poor performance, particularly in the second half. And when you are 3-1 down and you've conceded 3 at home, wherever you are in the league, whether you're near the top or whether you're at the bottom, I think not most, but a small proportion of fans are going to leave. Yeah, I think a lot of Forest fans would have left today not for let's boycott the game. Let's let's show a message to the players that were really disappointed. I think they just left because they'd probably seen enough and wanted to go home. Really, Mark.
Yeah, I want to pick you up on one thing. Today it was not 11 players kicking the ball; it was 10 players kicking the ball. Ryan Yates kicking the opposition.
I knew you could say something like that. So that's my take on it. Bit of a long-winded answer.
No, it's fair enough.
But as someone that watches football a lot and covers it, I think it's not just Forest fans that would have left at that time after seeing 3 goals at home conceded.
Okay, fair enough.
What do you think? You agree?
I mean, I'm honestly trying to give you my full attention, but I have the Kansas City Chiefs playing Denver Broncos on in the background, and it's 4th and goal here. So, and the Chiefs just literally did something rather unpleasant in the bed. I won't say the full, saying, but I think you guys can piece it together on the 3rd down. So, sorry, this isn't Garibaldi Red talk, but no, I was fully listening to you, Max. Wholly agree with whatever you just said. No idea what you just said, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay,
no, I do agree with you. I think fans are entitled to. Again, you pay your money. You fan as you want to fan. There's no one right way to fan. Me personally, I wouldn't leave the game early, and I think honestly, from what you just said, the thing that's most important is were fans trying to send a message to the players. If that was the case, that would disappoint me, because we've had a sensational season so far. And I think if you're trying to be really ornery about one poor performance out of 11, and there's been a couple of other performances which weren't high watermark, but one really poor performance out of 11, if you're throwing your toys out of the pram, that would disappoint me if that's the message you're trying to send as a fan. I don't think it was. So
No, I really don't. I think I just think from talking to fans around me at the game, and as I was walking back to the car, chatting to fellow Forest fans as you do, walking over Trent Bridge, it was disappointing. Bad day at the office. The bubble slightly burst. Move on. International break next week. Let's all go home and have a roast dinner.
Yeah,
that was the general saying. So yeah, moving swiftly on. Let us know your thoughts of whether you think fans should be allowed to leave early. At the end of the day, they pay their money, they can leave when they want. Who are we to say that we agree or not? They're just the opinions of us two. People will disagree. That is fine. Life is wonderful.
Just talking about it. It was in the zeitgeist, so just talking about it.
Yeah, of course. Right, talking of the fans leaving early, maybe let's talk about some of the players that seem to have, left early. I thought Anthony Elanga had a poor game, and that may surprise many people to, not single-handedly criticise him, but maybe just point him out. I think we've talked about it for a few weeks on the podcast now that he hasn't been in his best form, but I thought his decision-making was pretty poor today, and there was just certain things he should have done better. Yes, he gets the cross for Murillo's goal, but other than that, he didn't do much. And if you go on to the majority of the national media, they rate him pretty poorly. What did you make of Elanga today, Mark? And is there an argument, a clear reason that maybe Forest should start Jota Silva and give him a chance in the next couple of games?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't see what Nuno sees in the training sessions. So we don't have that full body of evidence to draw from when Nuno is picking the starting 11 on any given match. I think Elanga has definitely contributed this season, but anyone who listened to our ratings pod of a few episodes back now will know I was fairly critical of Elanga. Again, saying not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He definitely contributes. I think he's an excellent player on the squad, but maybe his starting position is under threat. I think he's actually picked up then. I'm quite sure he listened to our episode, Max, and responded accordingly. But today wasn't his finest 90 minutes, but it wasn't even 90 minutes, was it? He didn't make the entire game. But again, he wasn't alone in that. But I think I touched on something earlier. You revisited it, and this is the thing I think bothered me the most was the decision making. Being selfish on occasion, or maybe just not picking his head up early enough to be able to see the options that were available to him. But either way, the ball got turned over way too much, or he didn't make as much of it as he should have done. I'd like to see him be a bit more deliberate in taking on his marker. We've seen it a few times. Usually the ball gets knocked into space and creates a foot race, and that's when he's off to the races. But I'd like to see him be a bit more deliberate when he is squared up one-on-one with a fullback, to not just be looking inside or rolling it back to Aina, but to think, you know what, step over and go. Let's have a little dig here. Let's see what we can do. Let's try something different. Let's whip in. Let's get that little burst over 5 yards and then whip in an early cross for Wood or whoever else is crashing the box to have a nibble on. And so I'd like to see a little bit more of him just overall, but that's one area in particular where I think we could get more out of Elanga.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Elanga as well, were you shocked to see Callum Hudson-Odoi come off for Jota Silva?
I thought
that was a very, very questionable decision.
Although, as I said earlier, I thought Callum Hudson-Odoi was invisible today. I think
he did more than Elanga.
Well, I mean, what's worse? Is it worse to be kind of invisible and not really influencing the game, or is it worse to see a lot of the ball and be terrible with it? Maybe terrible is a little harsh, but I don't know which it is really. But I think I agree with you. I was surprised to see Callum come off before Anthony did, but I wasn't surprised to see either of them be subbed.
Yeah.
So maybe we're splitting hairs on that one.
Yeah, potentially. And I thought Jota Silva, yes, he gives away the ball, which maybe leads to their second or third. I can't exactly remember. I haven't watched the game back in full yet. I've literally got back an hour ago before we started recording this, and I thought Jota Silva looked bright again today. I thought his energy on the pitch.
I think he'd benefit from a start, Max, because it's funny, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about how he has performed when he's come on. And remember how I alluded to Elliot Anderson being like an over-eager puppy in his first couple of appearances. He was out there like trying to prove something. He's running around, he's closing people down, he's jumping it. He's like, dude, just chill. You've got the footwork, like wait for the ball to come to you. You're going to influence the game. But he was trying to cram all of him into a 10 or 15 minute cameo. I sort of feel the same might be true of Jota. And I wonder if the manager putting his arm around him and saying, you're starting this next match, and give him a heads up and have him like get, kind of settle into that and then be able to go from that first whistle. Maybe he won't try and kill himself. Maybe he'll be a little less frenetic and maybe we'll see a little bit more end product from him, because he's definitely got it there. He's got it in his locker. There's no doubt.
I mean, do you wonder, and I often think this in football, Mark, and this is just a random thought that's come to me, so bear with, but, Nuno almost doesn't want to start Jota Silva over Anthony Elanga because it's Anthony Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi, because they're I think if you went into Manchester now and interviewed City fans or United fans, and you went abroad and interviewed Barcelona, Real Madrid fans, and you said, right, name me 3 Forest players, I think the most common answer is probably going to be Gibbs White, Callum Hudson-Odoi, and Anthony Elanga. Maybe Chris Wood would creep into that.
Maybe Murillo these days too.
Yeah, true, actually. Yeah. Maybe Murillo.
Especially in Real Madrid circles, evidently.
Yeah, clearly, because they want him. But, I just think that, is there a sense of expectation that they always get a start? And you wonder whether that's the same off the pitch as well with the players and with Nuno. Do they have a similar mentality as maybe the fans do at times? Should
it could be.
Is Jota Silva not starting because, no disrespect to him, but it's Jota Silva. No one really heard of him up until when he signed for Forest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be. It also could, and we're very much in the realms of speculation here, Max. But it also potentially could be. We have that quartet that we always see on video together. Sometimes it's a trio. Oftentimes it's a quartet of Callum Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Elanga, Ola Aina, and Morgan Gibbs-White, and they're bros. Like they're tight. And I think part of our success, a big part of our success this season, has been that sense of team, that camaraderie that has developed, right? That either has developed organically or has probably been coaxed on by Nuno and the coaching staff. And a lot of that centers around guys that really enjoy being with one another, that want to fight for one another. They're going to give their all for one another. They're going to celebrate hard with one another when they do well. And I think there's a risk in breaking that up in, one or two of those guys being sat on the bench in order to accommodate Sosa or Jota or Anderson, whoever it might be. That shouldn't really factor in, but let's not be naive. It probably does. So, yeah, I think it's all of those things. But I think Nuno is smart enough, seasoned enough of a manager to be able to manage that situation and do what's best for the team, at the end of the day. So we hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go on to a few more general talking points and sum up, Morgan Gibbs-White, bit of a poor one from him today, Mark.
Yeah. I don't want to dig these players out too much.
I know, yeah. I feel like we've been quite. It's hard when we've been on this absolute high, and now we're kind of brought that not back down to reality because we never expected really to be here. But yeah, it's a sense of I think it's just a sense of disappointment. But we're not like we're not saying this is all. It's not like the episodes me and you used to do, Mark, in the last season when we were worried about do you remember that 1-1 draw we had to talk about away at Luton? My God, that was awful.
Lord.
Just look where Luton are now.
I know. I need to learn not to answer my texts sometimes. No, so again, I don't want to dig players out too much. You talk about reality. Here's the reality. I think if you said to any Forest fan before a ball was kicked this season, Forest are going to end up the year in the top half of the table, are you okay with that? Both hands would have been bitten off, right?
Yeah.
Been perfectly happy with 8th, 9th, goodness, 10th. That would be great progress, and we'd feel much more comfortable about how things have developed over the last 3 seasons and where they might then go next season. And now looking at this squad, not just the starting 11, but at this squad, we have a team capable of doing that. If we end up in the top 6, that would be mega. If we end up in the top 4, that will be ridiculous. If we worry any of the teams that are legitimately going for this league title for any period of time, then, I mean, that's just fun and games, man. That's just giggles, right? I mean, we're not going to win this league. We're not going to be in the top 3 in the last month of the season. So I think we do have to be realistic and keep our powder dry on that a little bit, and recognize that games like this are going to happen. They are. Newcastle, like you said, they're no mugs. They're a good team. This is going to happen from time to time. If we pick up 1 defeat in every 5 games, I'll take that. I'll take that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with the next 5 coming up. Who will that defeat be to? Probably Ipswich, knowing Forest.
Well, Tottenham did it today, right?
Yeah.
Good grief.
True. I don't know, Mark. It is a funny one, isn't it? Like, I just think with football fans in general, we are, you're so happy when you've won and then you're so disappointed when you've lost. And I just think, today is a little bit disappointing.
I think it's how you lose, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's how you lose. Like, if we'd gone toe-to-toe today and it was a 1-goal defeat, we'd be like, well, that's okay. The boys did us good. But because it was such a lackluster performance, it hurts more.
Yeah.
It's going to get more criticism.
Should Chris Wood have had a penalty?
No.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think maybe quick to blame poor Anthony Taylor.
Anthony Taylor is... I was trying to think of what adjective to use here because I want to be able to come back on this podcast. You know what? I'm not even going to say what I think. Even the nice ones are still going to come across harsh. So let's just say Anthony Taylor is consistently inept.
Yeah.
He's been very inept for us in the past. He was very inept, I think, more for Newcastle today. They had more of a shout for him not officiating with balance today than we did. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, he's from near Manchester. Actually, he says he's a Wigan fan or something. Or an
You've got a lift back with him if you just
maybe
stay till the final whistle. Oh my gosh, I want that podcast. Max and Anthony Taylor in a car to 2 hours back from Nottingham to Manchester. That would be an epic episode.
I don't know. I think I'd be arrested after it. especially if Stuart Atwell was in the back too. In fact, I tell you what Anthony Taylor would do if we were in that car, Mark. He'd be there. You can imagine Anthony Taylor being a right backseat driver because he likes to get involved with whatever he does and he likes to make it all about him. He'd mention himself for the 2-hour journey back to Manchester from Nottingham. He never asked me about anything I do. He'd make it all about himself. And then Stuart Atwell would be in the corner and Stuart would say something and then I'd, have a go maybe at Stuart and then Anthony Taylor would get involved and say, no, don't say anything bad about Stuart Atwell. We can't, we're all mates with each other. We have to stick up for each other.
You'd have a 5-game ban from the pod, Max, by the end of the
would. Clearly, yeah, absolutely. 5-game ban and we might win a few games then. That's me never working for the PGMOL, is it? I don't think that video will ever happen, Mark. More chance of, I don't know, me with the Prime Minister or something, or the President. Right. Final thoughts, Mark. Final thoughts. Give us some positivity. I just think we've got to look where we are, right? And look where we were a year ago. And look where we are now. Forest are 5th in the Premier League after this weekend. On Sunday, the 10th of November, we will go into another week ready at 5th in the Premier League. It just doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, and I think there's lots of positives to take out of it. We end, going into this international break 5th. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now I think both Arsenal and Chelsea went above us with that draw today. But we're in 5th place, which is ridiculous. We're in the top 6, 11 games in. We now have the international break to rest players who clearly need that time away from the field. So that's good. And with the exception of today, Forest's best games this season have been against... Actually, you know what? Okay, let me finish that thought. With the exception of today, Forest's best performances this season, and generally actually since we come back to the Premier League, have been against stronger opposition. That being said, of course, we had the West Ham game, who, West Ham aren't not tearing up any trees this year, and we battered them accordingly. But generally speaking, when we come up against those teams that we are expected to get nothing from, whether it's Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, we surprise Brighton, we surprise people. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about. I'm excited going into this holiday season. I wish I could be back in England. I think I got back the last 2 Boxing Days for games, but or maybe it was pre-Christmas and then Boxing Day. I'm not going to make it this year, unfortunately, but I am looking forward to the next run of games. And I am hoping, to your earlier point, that some of our subs get a bit more of a look in. I think it's time.
Yeah, me too. I've been calling it, haven't I? Jota Silva to start a game. So I'm going to put it on the line. He's going to start against Arsenal and have a brilliant game. Right, that finishes up nicely. Mark, thanks as ever, mate. Not the most entertaining podcast today, not that much to talk about. So I hope everyone thought we weren't too negative and, they're in a dark room lying down. Don't worry. And I think it's going to come. We're recording this Sunday night, but it's going to come out Monday morning. So it's not that bad. It's not all doom and gloom. Forest are 5th in the Premier League. If you're upset at work and you've got us on in the background, go onto Google, search Nottingham Forest, see where we are in the table, and just take it in. As always, give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us across there. Leave us a review if you did enjoy. We shall be back for our next episode, hopefully midweek, and then a preview. And what we're going to do, because he's such a loyal pundit to the podcast, is for our next episode, Mark's going to literally just stay live streaming until then, because obviously he's a proper fan, and he never, ever leaves early. Had to get that one in there. Mark, come on, you Reds. Cheers, mate, as ever. You Reds.